Hello, I'm Soycat and welcome back to a very windy second channel video. Today I'm here in Newfoundland, Canada, which is actually the closest point of not only Canada, but also all of the Americas to Europe. If you look at that point over there, you can see that's the geographic, like direct point. But either way, even from here, it's 3,000 miles to get from, Canada to Ireland, which is pretty scary when you think about 3,000 miles of just pure nothingness. There's no islands, there's nothing along the way. It's basically abyss and then you hit Europe eventually. But 3,000 miles is relatively short compared to the rest of North America. And, to put that in perspective, I have a flight later today to get from Newfoundland to Dublin, Ireland. It's going to take about 4 hours of scheduled flying time. Again, very short compared to most transatlantic flights. Anyway, with that in mind though, today's story is about both those things, but it's a bit indirect because the Canadian national identity is one of those things that, depending on where you live or what you believe in, you think Canada has either nailed the best or you think that they've done the worst. And honestly, I'm really torn between both of the opinions as to whether, Canada is the future of countries or whether they've, messed up as a country or whatever. But one of the things that I think can't be denied about Canadians as a whole is the hospitality aspect. And one of the biggest hospitality stories is actually the untold side of 9/11, because again, 9/11 is it's a story everyone knows something about. It was the big time the West was finally shook by terrorism, the time that really affected the rest of the world, the rest of the aviation industry. And as someone who cares about flying a lot and thinks it's an interesting subject, one of the stories that I didn't learn about until way too late is the Canadian side of 9/11. So again, this wasn't like on the terrorism side, there wasn't a huge terror event in Canada, but one of the things that happened on 9/11 is it just so happened to be the director of the FAA, like the head guy who called all the decisions. It was his first day. The name is Ben Sliney. I didn't believe this fact when I first heard it, but his very first day at the job of being head of the FAA, the aviation industry in America, his very first day was September 11th, 2001. So one of the decisions he made, because it was his first day and because this was an entirely unprecedented threat, was he decided to close down American airspace altogether. If you were a plane in American airspace, you had to land ASAP, or you would be shot down, and if you weren't already in American airspace, you were not allowed to enter. And this seems like, a pretty reasonable thing. Do you remember how many planes are in the sky at all times? I wish I could point to the sky and show you oh look, there's a plane up there, but somewhere above here there probably is a plane, because a lot of planes are in the sky at any given time. Tens of thousands of planes are in the sky going to various destinations, and given that the US, especially in 2001, was one of the hubs of not only the world economy but also aviation, a lot of planes were bound for America. And given that none of these planes could get into America because the airspace wasn't closed for 20 minutes till we get this locked down, for the next 6 hours till we work this out, it was closed for a very, very long time. And this meant that all of the planes which were trying to go to America could not get in. They were literally denied entry to American airspace, which, given they had very short fuel reserves, is a big problem, as you can probably imagine, right? We can't get into the country we need to get into. Also, we're running out of fuel. What do we do? And this is where Canada comes in. So, of course, I think, you might hear this dramatized as they were going to die if it weren't for Canada. Of course, Canada almost had an obligation to let people into their country, to let, the people land here. But the just scale in which they did it is really quite absurd. And Newfoundland, the place I'm in right now, had a lot of airports which were specifically designed, in the past for having, short transatlantic hops, stop here to refuel. So they had a lot of international airport facilities around tiny towns, because places like Gander Airport, for instance, are now not, they don't have very big towns attached. However, after 9/11 and after all these planes were denied entry to the US, they had to stop somewhere, and this is where Newfoundland really kind of stepped up. This is where Canada as a whole, lots of different airports, stepped up and allowed as many planes as they humanly could to land on their runways. In fact, let me show you. This is Gander International Airport right now on the screen you're seeing, on a normal day, and this is Gander International Airport on 9/11 with all of the planes that could physically fit there. And this might sound like okay, they let people land in their country, that's not a big deal, but the hospitality the villages and the towns provided, for instance, in Gander there was 8,000 passengers in a town with a population of not much more than that, and despite that, the people came together and they provided food every day, they provided water, they provided new blankets. It was a big effort, and that's something that Canada did that is kind of understated, I would say. It's not a story they brag about and they tell, but it really does show, in my opinion, the level of Canadian hospitality. If that had not happened, there would not, a lot of the people who would, would just be stranded on runways. This has happened before in places like Alaska, where, sometimes you just get stranded and you're stuck in the airport because you can't go anywhere until flights take off. And given that this was a week-long disturbance, the fact that they did a week-long worth of hospitality, again, I think that's a really good thing that, again, isn't mentioned very often at all. Although there is meant to be a musical about it, you can apparently watch. But who has watched the musical about Canada's role in 9/11? I don't think many people have. If you have, I'm sorry. Maybe it's before my time or something, or maybe I don't watch musicals. Both those things are probably true. But I wanted to kind of use that as a bridge to talk about, I guess, terrorism as a whole. Because one of the, you know, I've said the word terrorist like 5 times on my channel, and some people are like, no, Toycat, don't you see? Terrorists are sometimes freedom fighters, because as long as their side is right, in my opinion, that no. Let's just awkwardly say, you know, 9/11 isn't justified. And it's like, are we all good on that? Like, 9/11 not good. Okay, now we've got that out of the way. Let's talk about what is letting terrorism win. So when terrorists do things like just blow up towers, the economic damage they cause directly is quite huge. But in the grand scheme of a country like the US, the richest country in the world has ever known, you know, 9/11 wasn't actually that big of a dent. It was a big dent emotionally because 3,000 lives were lost in a way no one expected, and the way the towers went down in the biggest city in America. That's a big deal, of course, but the real impact of 9/11, the real problem with it, in my opinion, is what it allowed to happen to the rest of the world. So, if you don't know, a lot of the airport security procedures you know today happened on 9/11 or shortly thereafter. You know, there was a few other things that happened a little bit after, and the amount of you know, damage that security does to the world economy on a daily basis is huge. And you know, like, I can't really even express it. It was so much. It's so much more than 9/11 did in initial, you know, impact by knocking down a building, because every single day, every person traveling for any reason, especially for business though, has to take out so many minutes of their day to wait in line to be security vetted in what is mostly a security procedure, you know, security theatre procedure. We all know the security, you know, the airport security has never caught anyone. I think across the world, it's single digits the number of people who have been caught. Like, oh, I was just trying to bring my bomb through. That doesn't happen. People don't try to bring their bombs through. And admittedly, you can say, okay, there's a deterrent or something, but the amount of damage we're doing just to save those potential few things is absurd. Recently in Germany, one of the airports let one person through security without properly vetting them. Because of how security rules work, they had to take everyone through the departures lounge and then re-security them so they could guarantee that every single person had gone through security. The amount of damage that did to everyone but it happened in Frankfurt and it also happened in Munich, I believe. But the amount of damage that does to all of those people is absurd. That is letting the terrorists win, in my opinion. There are 2 ways you can respond to a terror event. You can respond, you know, with fear and carrying away, or some people feel like you can respond with, you know, hardline attacks to really hit the terrorists where it hurts. And this is what I think security is meant to feel like it's doing. Like, yeah, we're vetting people because we're going to catch those terrorists. But what really catches terrorists is intelligence services. The truth is, security theatre has such huge economic costs, and they had such a huge impact that the only true response should be to a terrorist event is no, you're not going to terrorize me. If you don't feel terrorized by a terrorist attack, then they don't happen over and over again, because the actual damage they're doing directly isn't very much. It's the damage they do through the terror they inflict, the distrust they sow. But if you don't let it do that, if you respond with no, this isn't going to happen, then you do, in my opinion, a much better thing. We should up funding for intelligence services or whoever, because you know, they're the people who actually catch terrorists, or for whatever actually catches terrorists. We shouldn't up funding for things that make people feel better about the fact that at some point we were terrorized. And yeah, one of the best points of that list is Canada, again, stepped in to save all these people, but the actions that, you know, America did to protect their safety, you know, shutting down their airspace after 9/11, that caused a lot of people a lot of misery, or it would have if it weren't for Canada. If it weren't for Canada, you know, coming in and saving a lot of these people, you know, not saving, but making their lives more comfortable, giving them the hospitality they deserved, then they'd have miserable days on days on days and weeks. You know, people going for all different reasons to America who have no idea what's going on until you know, they've landed and hours after. This is the downside of having high security measures. They don't stop things, they just hurt people. And on the scale of the planet, and on the scale of one of the biggest growing industries in the world, aviation, it's something that is under discussed, but really shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a controversial subject to say, you know what, maybe we should have less security because we don't catch people, because we all know that's the case. Anyway, go to Canada. Thank you for all the services, and also thank you for every time I've come here, despite the border security being pretty bad in Canada. I'd say Canadians are always the nicest, and you know, just 2 thumbs up on that. But yeah, before we go, here are some views off the area. It's super pretty. This hill right here, again, it's called Signal Hill, I believe, because there was some signaling being done at the top of the hill. Something lighthouse, I don't even know. That's a lighthouse over there, isn't it? Oh, there we go. How fun that is. But yeah, thank you very much for watching this second channel video. It's a bit of a weird to put this together, but it's something I wanted to talk about, because you know, the Canadian side of 9/11 is one of happiness and joy, and maybe that should be told more than the side of, oh, this was so terrible and we're gonna let it affect us forever, because I don't think you should, and apparently that's an offensive opinion, but it's something I believe in. So thank you very much for watching this second channel video, and I'll see you all in a... This is the first video you're seeing in 4K, by the way, so is that good? Is that bad? Is the wind just too awful for you? Let me know in the comments down below. Goodbye.